Housekeeping has a saying, the guest checks out, but the room tells the truth. The moment that door clicks open after a checkout, a story is already waiting inside, and it is almost never the story the guest believes they left behind. People think that when they hand back the keycard, they walk away clean. They don't. They leave evidence of who they are, of what they did, of what they were hiding the moment they were certain no one would ever see. And the people who clean these rooms, day after day, have walked into discoveries that range from the genuinely hilarious to the deeply baffling, to a few they have never, ever been able to forget. These are the strangest things the hotel housekeepers have found after checkout. Real, documented discoveries. Some will make you laugh, some make no sense at all. And the last one will stay with you long after this video ends. So take a breath, because we are about to open the door. Our first door opens onto green. The housekeeper expected a standard room. What she found was a jungle. Every available surface, the desk, the windowsills, the nightstands, the floor along the walls, was covered in plants. Not a few sad potted ferns, dozens of them, in cups, in takeout containers, in the ice bucket, in the coffee carafe, all arranged with obvious care. The curtains had been replaced with sheets of tinfoil taped to the glass, and 2 desk lamps had been repositioned to hang low over the largest cluster of leaves, like tiny artificial suns. For a long moment, standing in the doorway, she genuinely wondered whether she had walked into the wrong building. The mystery did not last. As she looked closer, the story assembled itself. The guest, it turned out, had been growing herbs and tomato seedlings, an entirely legal, deeply earnest little garden, apparently unwilling to leave his hobby behind for a 2-week stay. He had built a complete miniature greenhouse inside a mid-range hotel room, foil and all, and then, on checkout day, simply walked away from every last sprout, leaving his harvest to be discovered by a woman with a vacuum cleaner. She counted the plants later, mostly out of disbelief. There were 41. The guest had left no note, no explanation, and no forwarding address for his tomatoes. Housekeeping kept the healthiest basil plant on the break room windowsill for months. It outlived 3 more checkouts on that floor. The second door looked at first glance completely normal, until the housekeeper realized that nothing was where it was supposed to be. The bed had been moved across the room to the opposite wall. The desk now faced the door. The 2 armchairs had somehow been carried into the bathroom. The television had been turned to face the corner, and the large framed artwork had been taken down and propped carefully beneath the window. This was not the chaos of a party or the wreckage of an argument. Everything was intact. Everything was clean. It had simply, methodically been rearranged, as though the guest had decided the hotel's interior designer had made a series of grave mistakes and had quietly spent the evening correcting them. Moving a hotel bed is not a small undertaking. They are heavy and often anchored to the wall. This guest had been determined. When the front desk gently followed up, the explanation arrived without a trace of embarrassment. The original layout, the guest explained, had blocked the flow of energy, and he simply could not be expected to sleep in a room where the bed faced the wrong direction. So he had fixed it. He assumed they would be grateful. Housekeeping spent the better part of an hour putting an entire hotel room back together, including extracting 2 armchairs from a bathroom, while the energy, presumably, flowed freely once more. The third room stopped the housekeeper before she had fully stepped inside, because rising from the center of the floor was a tower. Over the course of a long stay, the guest had ordered a great deal of room service, and rather than letting the trays pile up by the door like everyone else does, he had built with them. Every plate, every glass, every little jam jar, every water bottle and coffee cup and silver dome had been stacked, with the patience of an engineer and the soul of an artist, into a single, towering sculpture nearly as tall as the desk. It did not wobble. It had been balanced. Cups bridged plates. Bottles formed columns. The domes crowned the very top like the roof of a strange cathedral built entirely out of 1 week's appetite. There was no note explaining it, and none was really needed. This was not a mess. It was a monument, left, clearly, as a gift or a challenge, or simply the proud final act of a man who had grown bored of television and discovered a far more interesting use for his dishes. Housekeeping stood and admired it for a moment before the sad business of taking it apart began. Someone, they all agreed afterward, should really have photographed it first. One of them, quietly, did. Those are the rooms that make housekeeping laugh on the drive home, but laughter is the easy part of this job. Because some rooms don't make you laugh, they just make you stop in the doorway and wonder. Which brings us to one of the oldest mysteries in the building. A small one, but one the staff have never solved. The shoes. Across years of checkouts, in different rooms, on different floors, the housekeepers at this hotel kept finding, left behind, a single shoe. Never a pair. One shoe. A man's dress shoe under a bed. A child's sneaker in a closet. A single high heel standing upright in the middle of an otherwise empty room, as if its owner had simply evaporated mid-step. People forget things in hotels constantly. Phone chargers, books, the occasional entire bag. But a person notices eventually that they are missing a shoe. You cannot really leave a hotel, get all the way home, and not realize you are wearing only one. And yet, year after year, the lost and found shelf accumulated a small, lonely collection of unmatched, unclaimed footwear, each one belonging to a guest who never called, never returned, and apparently walked out into the world fully content to be missing exactly one shoe. The staff have a running theory that it is always the same kind of guest, the kind too proud to ever admit the mistake. They have no proof. They just have the shelf, and the shelf keeps growing. The fourth door is where Strange tips quietly into unsettling. The housekeeper pushed it open, glanced toward the desk, and froze because someone was sitting there. A figure upright in the desk chair, facing the window, perfectly still. Her first instinct was to apologize and back out. The guest had clearly not left yet. Then she noticed the figure had not moved at all. Not a breath. Not a flicker. She stepped closer, heart pounding, and understood. It was not a person. It was a mannequin, a full-size, fully dressed mannequin, seated at the desk as though quietly working, its hands resting on the surface, its face turned politely toward the morning light. The guest had checked out hours earlier and left it behind. There was no note, there was no clue as to why a person travels with a life-size mannequin, dresses it each day, and seats it at a hotel desk. The most likely explanation, the staff decided, was also the gentlest one, that someone who travels alone a great deal had simply grown tired of empty rooms and had found his own quiet way to never quite check into one. Whether that thought makes you smile or makes your skin prickle probably says more about you than it does about him. Housekeeping, for the record, named the mannequin, gave it a chair in the back of the storage room, and to this day refuses to throw it out. That one, the staff laughed about, eventually. The next two, they didn't, because a hotel room doesn't only hold what a guest forgets. Sometimes it holds what a guest was afraid of. The fifth room had been sealed from the inside. When housekeeping entered, every reflective surface had been covered. The bathroom mirror, the full-length mirror by the closet, even the dark screen of the television, all of them taped over with towels, with paper, with anything the guest could find. The peephole in the door had been blocked. The smoke detector on the ceiling had been wrapped, carefully, in a plastic laundry bag. The vents had strips of tape across them. The room looked like the work of someone who had spent the entire night convinced they were being watched, and had fought back against every object that might possibly be watching. There was no camera, of course. There never is. What the room recorded was not surveillance, but fear. A guest so gripped by the certainty of hidden eyes that they had methodically blinded an entire hotel room, one surface at a time, and then tried to sleep inside it. The staff found it disquieting, not because of anything in the room, but because of what it implied about the long, sleepless night someone had spent there, alone, taping over their own reflection. They removed the towels and the tape in silence. Some rooms you clean quickly, and you do not talk about them afterward. The sixth discovery is the one that still has no ending. The room was empty, and clean, and ordinary, except for a single suitcase standing in the exact center of the floor. Hard-shelled, expensive, and locked. The guest had checked out, or seemed to have. The key card was gone, the bill was settled, the bed had been slept in. But the suitcase remained squarely in the middle of the room, as though it had been set down deliberately and forgotten, or left there on purpose. Now be honest with me for a second. You are standing in that doorway. A stranger's locked suitcase sits in front of you, abandoned. Would you have opened it? Housekeeping is not allowed to. They followed protocol exactly. The suitcase was logged, sealed, and moved to secure storage, where the hotel tried, for weeks, to reach the guest. The phone number on file was disconnected. The email bounced. The name on the reservation, when anyone looked into it, did not seem to belong to a person who could be found. The case sat in storage for the better part of a year, locked, heavy, and silent, while the staff invented quieter and quieter theories about what might be inside. Eventually, by law, it had to be opened. And what they found within was so completely, almost disappointingly ordinary. Clothes, toiletries, a few paperback books, that it only deepened the mystery. Because the real question was never what was in the suitcase. It was why someone would pack a life into it, set it down in the middle of a hotel room, and then walk out of their own story and never come back for it. For every room that unsettles the people who clean it, there is another that does the exact opposite. Because the same place that holds our worst nights also holds our best ones. And housekeeping sees those too. The seventh room was spotless. The guest had stripped the bed themselves and folded the used towels into a neat stack by the door, which housekeeping almost never sees. And on the pillow, propped against the headboard, was a handwritten note. The staff brace for these, a little because notes left behind are usually complaints, a list of grievances, a demand, a final insult. This one was not. It thanked the housekeeper by the name on her badge for the small things she had done all week without being asked. The extra pillow, the way she had arranged the children's toys on the bed each morning, a quiet kindness during a hard few days the guest never explained. Folded inside the note was a tip, a genuinely generous one, far beyond anything expected, with a single line at the bottom asking the hotel to please make sure it went to her and not into a shared pool. People assume the front desk sees the real guest. It doesn't, always. The person who cleans your room at 8 in the morning while you are downstairs at breakfast sees something far more honest, how you treat someone you will never have to face again and who can do nothing for you in return. Most guests leave behind a mess and a memory the staff would rather forget. This one left a note a housekeeper kept in her locker for years. Which brings us finally to the last room, and the one nobody on staff has ever forgotten. It began as a lost and found item, the way so many of these do. After a checkout, housekeeping found a watch, left on the nightstand. Not a flashy watch. An old one, worn, slightly scratched, the kind of object that is clearly worth very little and means absolutely everything. It would have been easy to log it and shelve it. Instead, something about how carefully it had been placed, square in the center of the nightstand, not dropped, not forgotten in a drawer, but set down, made the staff try harder than they had to. They tracked down the guest. When they finally reached her, there was a long silence on the phone, and then she explained. The watch had belonged to her husband, who had died earlier that year. The room they were calling about was a room the two of them had stayed in many times, on an anniversary trip they had taken every single year of their marriage. She had come back alone, one last time, to stay in it once more. And she had left his watch behind, she admitted, not entirely by accident. She had not been able to decide whether to keep carrying it or to leave it in the one place that still felt like both of them. The hotel returned the watch to her, and she was grateful to have it back. She admitted she had almost not answered their call at all, certain it would only be one more piece of cold paperwork from a year already overflowing with it. But she also told them something the staff still repeat to this day, that a part of her had quietly hoped the room would simply keep it, because that room, she said, already held everything else. And that is the truth housekeeping learns, one door at a time. We think we check out clean. We think we leave nothing behind but a tip and an unmade bed. But every room we pass through quietly keeps a piece of who we were inside it. The guest checks out. The room remembers. Every guest believes the same comforting thing, that when the door closes behind them, the room forgets they were ever there. It doesn't. A hotel room is one of the most honest places on earth, a small, locked space where we stop performing, because we are so certain no one is watching. And then, a few hours later, someone opens the door and reads the truth we left behind. So tell me, honestly, in the comments, what is the strangest thing you have ever left behind in a hotel room? Was it an accident? Or did some part of you mean to leave it there? And did you ever go back for it? I would genuinely love to know. And if you want to be standing in that doorway with me the next time a door clicks open after checkout to see what the rest of the world only walks past, subscribe. Some rooms you never forget.